Billy, you're muted.
Let's try that. So, the opposite of not ready for prime time, well, maybe, is I guess finally ready for prime time. And so, the finally ready for prime time college football forecast with Bill Carroll and my co-host directly over there, the babyface assassin himself, Brock Vierra, and by semi-popular demand, the X's and O's segment is back. Brock and I will break down. I will break down on the Notre Dame side, the defensive game plan for the Duke versus Notre Dame game, and Brock will represent the offense. But before that, we're going to break down some games. How's everything going, Brock?
It is going good. Busy week personally, followed by another incredibly busy week here in the world of college football. We had some great games going on yesterday, had some really good games going on today, and we're always excited for Saturday football. Great matches across the board. We're jumping right into conference play. USC versus Colorado on big new kickoff is definitely going to have a lot of eyes for their offensive prowess. We're still kind of waiting to see what is going to happen with Travis Hunter in that game. Some really good matchups in the SEC. And there's a couple of teams that got on upset alert, so I'm looking really forward to tomorrow's games.
Yes. My assumption is that Travis Hunter will be held out at least another week or two. He suffered, of course, a not life-threatening, but scary internal injury. And he is a young man with a lot ahead of him in terms of football and life. And if nothing else we know about Deion Sanders, a.k.a. Coach Prime, he doesn't just talk the talk. He walks the walk when it comes to caring for his students and wanting to see them have long and successful, not just careers, but lives. So I believe he'll err on the side of caution regarding the health and safety of one Travis Hunter. So there's a couple of games on the docket, as people like to say, that I am particularly interested in, and we'll poke at some of those games. We'll talk about them. You said there's some big games out west, and that's true. There's some sneaky fun games in the Midwest. There are some big games in the ACC and SEC as they finally, both those conferences are now firmly entering into conference play. And I'll walk through some of those as well. So there's some, like I said, some big time and important things that I want to see happen. And some teams are going to prove themselves, either prove themselves to be worthy, of the attention, the ranking, the love, the adulation that has been heaped upon them, and some will be proven to be the other thing. People like to say, "Oh, contenders versus pretenders." Sometimes like to say, some teams show up, some teams show off, some teams show out, and some teams are shown the door. So this is going to be a big moving day, right? This Saturday is going to be a moving day Saturday. I think some teams are going to move up, some teams will move out, and some teams will solidify their spot in the college football rankings. And so I guess that's enough jibber jabber. Who are your favorite games? What games are you really looking forward to, and why? Brock, we'll start with you.
So I want to start by saying that the SEC has a whole host of very interesting matches that they're going to define define their season for a lot of these teams, and also the tenure of the coaching staff. One of the matches I want to kick off with is Florida at Kentucky. They have a 9 a.m. kickoff time here on the West Coast, so I believe that's noon in Kentucky. So Florida is ranked number 22 in the nation. They're currently 3-1 at the moment. Everyone is kind of riding high on them over the victory against Tennessee, but they haven't been overly impressive this year, whereas Kentucky is undefeated at 4-0, somehow unranked, has a tremendous quarterback in Devin Leary, and has one of the most prolific, I don't use the word prolific, consistent offenses on the SEC. They have a sneaky good defense. I think I'm calling upset alert for that game. Actually, Kevin says upset. Kentucky's actually favored by 1 point in this matchup. So I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup to kind of see where these teams are in terms of their progress in the SEC, especially the SEC East, where there really isn't that second. We don't really know who that second team is outside of Georgia in terms of who's going to go to the SEC Conference Championship game. Of course, the annual Jerry Jones Bowl. Texas A&M is 3-1. They play Arkansas at 2-2. Arkansas has had a really tough road so far. A really tough loss in Baton Rouge last week to that LSU team that they lost by 3, I believe 38-35. They lost at home against BYU in kind of a shocking manner. KJ Jefferson just continues to be a major question mark for me in terms of his status, in terms of being a good college quarterback. Arkansas, Sam Pittman, there's a lot of resentment going about him. People are calling for his job up in Fayetteville. So it's really going to be a big prove-it game. However, a win against the Aggies would be huge. And then across the board, across the field, for Jimbo Fisher, it's kind of a prove-it game for him. He had a bounce-back game last week against Auburn, but they didn't look overly impressive, and they pulled away late. By Petrino, DJ Durkin, I think they're still kind of figuring out what they're doing there. Jimbo Fisher proves to be a very, very, very questionable hire for A&M. We go to the ACC. Clemson at 2-2 is taking on the 4-0 Syracuse. Dino Babers, of course, University of Hawaii graduates. Big fan of his. They have a really good staff. It's going to be the big game for them. And also for Dabo Swinney, if he loses this game, he goes 0-3 in conference play. I believe that'll be the first time that's ever happened to him during his tenure at Clemson. Big game on the docket for them. Early morning matchup again, especially after a tough loss last week to Florida State. Going across the board, bunch of interesting matchups. Georgia versus Auburn. I have the Bulldogs on upset alert. They're 14.5-point favorite, but I haven't seen enough out of Carson Beck or honestly this offense in general to feel real confident. I think Mike Bobo is one of the worst offensive coordinators in all of college football. How he keeps getting jobs, especially at the SEC level, is kind of beyond me. He wasn't good at Auburn. He wasn't good at Colorado State as a head coach. And when you keep looking back, it seems like he more gets jobs because he knows people instead of being able to actually call a proper offense. However, that Georgia Bulldogs defense is excellent. Auburn, remember, is coached by Hugh Freeze, who is the king of the upsets. They do play at Jordan-Hare, so I have the Bulldogs on upset alert. I also have the Longhorns on upset alert. The Longhorns play number 24 Kansas in Austin. Keep in mind, last time the Longhorns played Kansas in Austin, there was that big upset 2 years ago that really helped Lance Leipold cement his program. Both teams are 4-0. Both teams are ranked, and the winner of this game will take first place in the Big 12. Of course, for Texas and even Kansas too, major college football playoff implications. One more game I wanted to talk about really quick before we jump back over to you is going to be Washington at Arizona. Now, Washington, to me, looks like the number one team in the country at the moment. They have an incredible quarterback in Michael Penix Jr., who throws left-handed, which really gives defenses some issues. They have the best wide receiver room in all college football. That kid, Jalen Polk, Romo Dunze, and Jalen McMillan are absolute studs. They have a very underrated defense. Kellen DeBoer is probably the best coach in all college football. But don't stop with this Arizona team. Now, there's a little bit of turmoil in terms of the quarterback situation. They have these two kids coming in, but however, do not count out that Arizona wide receiver room. Jacob Cowing, Terratore McMillan. The Jed Fish really has his team rolling in the right direction. They do play in Tucson. They do have that later start in the day, and it's a very arid environment. So I also have the Huskies on upset alert. Those are the games that I'm going to be really focusing on this Saturday.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that. Those are all good, solid games that I will be checking out as well, either live or on tape. I'm going to swing back to the East, to ACC country. And a game that maybe doesn't seem like it should be a big game, or does it feel like a big game, is a big game. So Louisville's 4-0. They're 2-0 against ACC opponents. They've won 6 of their last conference games. Louisville, for whatever reason, you just mentioned sort of how Kentucky, in fact, 2 Kentucky teams are sort of somehow flying beneath the radar, and they're both really good programs on both sides of the ball that people just don't seem to give any credit to, at least thus far. And there was some dark horse buzz around NC State coming into the season. There was a lot of high hopes about what, Brennan Armstrong might be and a lot of other things. And now some of that's cooled a bit, but they're 3-1 and 1-1 in ACC play. Assuming that Louisville comes out with a victory, and I think Louisville will win, they'll now be 5-0, 3-0 in conference. It seems like at that point, maybe people should take take stock of them and realize that this is a good team. So the over-under on that game is 56. That gives you an idea of what people think of both the offenses and defenses. They aren't bad defenses, but people probably think the offenses are a little more explosive and a little more settled in. So some of the things that I'll look out for, Louisville's getting 3.5 or giving, 3.5 to NC State, 3.5-point underdog. I think they'll cover that. I think that they have enough sort of sprinkled everywhere. So they have a very robust offense. Obviously, I mean, the Brome brothers have offense will travel. Everybody, I think, already knows that. But to me, the revelation is their defense. They're only allowing 19 points per game. They're a top 4 defense in the ACC, and I think a top 40 defense, period, in college football. They only allow a 55.8 percentage to opponents, which 30 years ago would have been like a bleh number, and 50 years ago would have been a terrible number. Now it's a very good number. And they want to give up 3.6 yards per rush per attempt against their defense. They're top 10 in the FBS, all across the FBS in red zone efficiency. NC State is now second fewest in passing yards in the ACC. So their passing offense has not looked great. This could be a great matchup potentially for the Louisville defense. They also lead the ACC in total yardage, 542 yards per game. Passing yards, 304.8 yards per game. Rushing yards, 237.3 yards per game. So this could, I won't say boat race or blowout, but I will not be surprised at all if this is a 10 to 17 point win for Louisville. If somehow NC State makes a game of it, here's the things that'll have to happen. They do have a good defense themselves. They're top 15 in the FBS in third down efficiency themselves, 30%. They only allow 326 total yards per game, which is excellent, and 3.7 yards per carry so far. They only allow a 58.1% completion percentage, which was, once again, wouldn't have been that great years ago, but it's pretty good. They have a player that I absolutely love, and he reminds me of another old NC State linebacker named Audie Cole, who found his way into the NFL. So it feels like they found another Audie Cole in Peyton Wilson, who right now leads the ACC in tackles, number 8 in all of FBS. I think he's probably a mid-round, 4th, 5th type draft pick, depending on how he tests. Has more than 300 tackles so far in his collegiate career. Brendan Armstrong has been, as I said, a bit of a disappointment, but the talent is there for him to make big plays. We saw him do it before. It hasn't happened recently. He was an accomplished player. He holds a bunch of program records at UVA for passing yards, total yardage. They still, despite their offense being kind of stuck in the mud, are 52% converting on third down, which is top 3 in the conference. So they have a shot, but I don't like their chances very much. And another team that I've circled that I like, I told you right out of the box that I liked Utah a great deal. And they've managed to keep the boat moving and afloat despite missing Cam Rising. And hopefully he'll be back soon. Oregon State is another team I like. So it's 2 teams I really like out west meeting for the last time, sadly, at least for the foreseeable future, which is a little depressing. But they both are coming off of fairly impressive performances. The Pac-12, as we know it, is essentially in its death throes, but it's a fascinating question mark of what even is in the future for Oregon State. They don't have the advantage of, the Q value or name recognition or whatever you want to call it, public recognition that their neighbors to the south. Oh boy. Don't quiz me on Oregon geography right now, people. But I can't remember where Corvallis is now in relation to Beaverton. But their neighbors to the wherever, who are the more well-known and more recognized team in the conference. So they haven't even had a lot of exciting. I mean, they have some options, but people have not been knocking down the doors. So ironically, Oregon State might be a 10, 11, I think no worse than 9-win team with looking for a place to hang their hat football-wise. But let's get back to the game itself. So Cam Rising has not played yet. He's apparently still they don't have to, unlike the NFL, they don't have to disclose players' injury information. So he may or may not play. I'm guessing he may not. But they've looked pedestrian on offense without him. But they've found ways to win. It's a night game. The Beavers are currently 4-point favorites. and the over-under on that game is 44 points. That feels, even I know these two good defense, that feels a little low. I feel like they're going to get at least to the 46, 47 point mark. I think 47 feels about right to me. And it'll be interesting to see, like I said, exactly how this plays out. I feel like Damian Martinez, who is 5th in the nation in rushing yards, 758 yards, 7.58, sorry, yards per carry, 7.58 yards per carry. And he's not doing it by making a bunch of people miss. Like, he's doing it the old-fashioned way, breaking tackles. He gets down. He's a one-cut-and-go runner. The Oregon State runner he reminds me most of is Reuben Drones. Other people would love to say, Steven Jackson. He's not that. Steven Jackson was a rare talent. He's good. He's not that level of talent, but good. He's going to be part of somebody's running back by committee system. Dameon Pierce is another fairly good comparison of what I think he could be at the NFL level. So they have a 1-2 punch in Martinez and Fenwick. Fenwick's the sort of more, he's the more lightning of thunder lightning combo. As I mentioned, Martinez is a kid from Louisville, Texas. Pretty good football pedigree coming out of high school. Great get for Oregon State. And then Fenwick is a South Carolina transfer who just came off a 101-yard, 3-touchdown game against Washington State. And he averaged 9.2 yards a carry in that game. Now, obviously, he's not doing that for the season. They want to run the football. They also are very good on special teams. They're a solid special teams team. They're going to find a lot of those sort of hidden yards where they get a good punt return, then they deny you a good punt return, that kind of thing. They are one of just 6 teams in the whole country that have forced opponents into negative punt return yardage for a game. That's how good they are on special teams. They've allowed only 4 returns for a net of -2 yards. Right. So, how does Utah win this game? Woo! I'm a Utah person. I'm high on Utah. I thought they had a chance even being a team that makes it all the way to the Final Four. Now, obviously, Cam Rising missing this game, if he does miss this game, will really hurt those chances. But they are way up there in time possession. They are 4th in the country and clearly number 1 in the Pac-12 in time possession. They only allow their opponents to have the ball 25 minutes and 16 seconds of a 60-minute ball game. They've won the time possession battle in 3 out of 4 games this season, including the Weber State game, where they held the ball for 40 minutes and 5 seconds. Oregon State's defense has struggled defending the pass. Now, that's not the strength. Ironically, it's sort of weakness against weakness. Or as the kids like to say, admit off, where a very sort of non-exciting passing attack goes against a not great passing defense. But they do allow 257.2 yards passing per game, which is 10th in the conference, in a conference that, likes to throw the football, and 105th in the country. Last week, they were torched by 422 yards by my guy, Cam Ward, who I'm a big, big, big fan of, and more people should talk about. But not the time for that. So I'm leaning over, if you care about that. I think that, like I said, I think it's at least a 47-point combo in that game. And as much as it hurts me to say this, I do think Utah loses this game, but I think they lose it by very low number of points. 4 might still be too many. I could see it being a 1 to 3 point game. It just comes down to, can Utah force turnovers? If Utah is able to get the ball back in advantageous situations, they have a chance to hold on and make a run in that game. Bringing it back to the two of us before we launch to the X's and O's segment. Any other things you want to hit on, Brock, before we do put on our overly tight practice pants? The shorts, the compression shorts, and the whistles, and the stopwatches.
No, I just want to say with those 2 games, I think something that we also got to look at is there's future head coaches on both in those games in general. There's 2 guys I want to point out. Obviously, Jeff Brown's brother, Brian, he's been the offense coordinator with his brother Jeff at Purdue for a long time, and now he's been hitting at Louisville. I think that he's going to get probably a Conference USA-style job. It just seems like it's time for him to break out if he chooses to. And then Morgan Staley for Utah, the defensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting for him because he lost his coach in waiting kind of role when he made some racially charged comments. So I'm not exactly sure what his future looks like at Utah in terms of taking over for Kyle Whittingham, even though I'm sure that possibility is still very, very strong. However, he is one of the better defensive minds in all of college football. I wouldn't be surprised to see him become a head coach somewhere else anytime soon. I think it's going to be more quicker for Brom than for Staley, considering that Staley played at Utah, has been a member of the football staff as a coach and also an administrator. I think he spent almost over 20 years already over there, and he's only like 46. So that's something to keep in mind. But those are two coaches to watch out for. Last thing I just want to say is shout out to Rich Rodriguez at the Jacksonville State and Jacksonville State. They are, I believe, 4-0 right now. They had a really tough, gritty win against the 0-4 Sam Houston State. So just shout out to him. Really, really great transition for him as he come into the FBS. And the last thing I want to say is because we got to fire somebody, I'm not sure when we get that opportunity later. Why does Dana Dimel still have a job at UTEP? Yeah, but that's all I'm gonna say as we jump into our X's and O's segment. So that
well, don't worry, Brian Brown will have that job soon enough.
Either him or Ben Arbuckle at Washington State for what he's doing with Cam Moore. But of course, there'll be time for another day. But
yes, that'll be another day.
Very happy to send us back. Very excited to talk X's and O's with you one more time. We did this a lot last year, and we got two really incredible teams talking about Duke, who has one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, Riley Leonard, and one of the best coaching performances in Mike Elko, and of course your Marcus Freeman-led Notre Dame defense, which major question marks after last week, not in terms of performance, but in terms of having the amount of people that you are allowed to have on a field in critical times. We're gonna jump into that right now, and I'm so ready for it. Bill, take it away.
Sure. Well, counting aside, math problems aside, Marcus Freeman is widely and correctly seen as one of the best young coaches in football. And he is one of the best young coaches in football. So it's not just, people are not making this up. It's because he is. And I think that his time has come, and he took some criticism, some fair, mostly unfair, though, I believe, last year. And now people are getting a better chance to see, as he sort of builds his version of the program, as he builds what he likes to do and how he likes to do it into what they do. So for those who are unfamiliar with Marcus Freeman, and why would you be? But if you are, for some reason, unfamiliar with him, a standout linebacker himself in his own days in college, went to The Ohio State, played with, I think, Laurinaitis and that bunch, if memory serves it correctly, when he was there.
Wasn't he with Andy Katzenmoyer too?
Katzenmoyer, right, that bunch. Right. Yes, that much. And boom, right? There he is. That's Marcus Freeman, ladies and gentlemen.
And in a lot better shape than the previous head coach. I'm just want to start with that.
Well, if indeed win sprints is like how you decide who you're hiring coaches, yeah, Marcus Freeman is going to be near the top of your board, because I'm trying to like who else would be up there really able to compete with. There was a short list of guys who I think could really give him a go. Someday when Brennan Marion is being considered for head coaching jobs, he's also going to be a guy that could be problems for people to beat. If win sprints is how you're deciding who gets your coaching job. But what he does on defense is interesting, but not surprising. Like there's not a lot of, it's not super exotic. It's mostly a lot of things you've seen before. They play a fair amount of zone, probably about just a little over 50% zone. They're probably about between 50 and 60% zone, depending on who they're playing. A mix between middle field open and middle field close. And what I mean when I say middle field open versus middle field close, when you are in essentially an even number of coverage players deep, cover 2, cover 4, and then things like cover 6, which is quarter, half, and other little combos, things you can do, you are saying to the other team, we are not giving you access to certain parts of the field, but in exchange for that, we are giving you a certain amount of access to other parts of the field. You have to sacrifice something, right? It's just like when you're playing chess or anything else. You in order to protect one thing, you're leaving something unprotected. So in cover 4 quarters, whether it be quarters man or quarter zone, you are sending both your two safeties and your two corners deep with whatever's happening, which means that you are vulnerable in that flat area, right? Especially, or just in the area just behind the flats, because unless your linebackers are super freaky, they're going to have to at some point pass that off. And there's a space, there's a gap, right? And we all have seen Aaron Charles Rodgers and other really accurate passes who throw with good anticipation, make a living off of that area, 14, depending on how deep drops are, 14 to 22 yards in those areas outside behind the flats. There's money to be made, right? The honey hole, the hole shot, the turkey shot, you've heard a million different ways to describe it, but that's what they're talking about. If you decide to take that away, either by inverting, and by inverting, that means you're dropping your safeties down and having your corners run deep. So even though you call it zone, for corners, it's almost like playing man, right? Because if somebody's in your area and they're running deep, you're running with them. You might as well be playing man coverage, because that's what you're almost doing. While the safeties are dropping down in invert coverage, and they do that a fair amount in invert coverage, and now they're taking away flats, curls, hooks. They're taking away a lot of those, quick outs and things like that you make money on against, quarters man, quarters zone, and obviously two man and cover two. So you're going to see cover three also, and of course, everyone who watches pro football is now very familiar with cover three. It's sort of the flavor of the month right now, at least in the NFL, particularly what they call matchup cover three. And matchup means that it's zone, but it's huggier. It's more it's closer. Like you're when someone comes to your zone, you're getting a little closer to them, rather than giving them a certain amount of free access until you start to check them. You're moving towards them as they're moving towards you. And so there's a certain amount of redirecting and things like that. And for the best example of it, the most famous example of obviously is the Legion of Boom version of the Seattle Seahawks, where people like Richard Sherman would come and get you as you came into their zone instead of just sort of passively waiting. And he would get his hands, his hips, his shoulders all on you. He would play a very, very up close and personal version of zone that felt like press man at times even. And especially because he had super long arms and was physically strong. At 16 bench reps corner means he's stronger than, most corners and even a few linebackers you're going to run into. So he would play a very physical version of zone. And they do that a fair amount as well, but not to the extent that, guys like Richard Sherman or even any of the guys that, Tariq Woolen or any of the sort of classic Seattle corners do. The other thing they do is they like to blitz. They're not super blitz heavy. They like to blitz situationally. And if they get you, even a second and deep, like it doesn't be third and deep, they get you in whatever in deep. It could be first. If for some reason you committed a couple of offensive penalties and now it's 1st and 25, they might bring it. They're looking to force you to make a quick decision and possibly make a mistake. And that's not different from most defensive minds. So this is what we're going up against, right? For those who like to sort of look at offensive trees, right? Offensive lineages. I remember when the late, great Randy Walker he wasn't the first into the pool spread-wise in the Big Ten. He was the second one. The first into the pool was Joe Tiller, but Joe Tiller was a true old-fashioned, newfangled at the time, old-fashioned now, spread where you spread them and shred them. If we run the ball, it's for flavor, to show people we can. What Randy Walker did, and he wasn't so much an innovation as it wasn't so much an invention as it was an innovation, was he took power run game concepts and married them to the Rodriguez / Urban Meyer / Kevin Wilson version. Well, Kevin Wilson, of course, at the time is an assistant, not a head coach. But all these guys wanted to say, instead of eschewing the tight end, we're going to use tight ends. Instead of eschewing fullbacks or H-backs, we'll find a way to use them, but we'll still be 3 wide. We'll still be in either shotgun or pistol, and we'll still go up tempo, but we're going to want to run first. So they were spreading you to run on you. And outside zone was sort of at the heart of all of it. And for those who remember the emergence of Northwestern under Randy Walker, sort of from a 30-plus year sleep where at one point they were probably the worst FBS for a while, the worst FBS program in the country. And then to turn around and, do what they did, make it to the Rose Bowl and, knock off Michigan, all these other things would have been unthinkable in another time. So they do go under center also. Zoot de lors, right? Because you can't go under center. And they would even go play with two tight ends at time. And that was the part that made them different and exciting to people that have been looking at spread offenses and saying, but what do you do when you get to 3rd and 2 and you have to have it? What do you do in goal line situations? Okay, we go big, right? Which, I mean, when you think about it, it doesn't seem like, okay, put bigger guys out there. Oh, okay. But for some reason, no one really had embraced it within spread offenses until then. That was sort of like I said, not an invention, just an innovation. And so to defend that, what do? You will occasionally present what looks like a light box and then walk someone up late, right? So you present a 5 or even a 6-man box and then walk up a safety late, or you have a nickel if your nickel is a tough enough person to tackle in space, and some are, then you walk them up last minute. As the ball is being snapped, they take 3 or 4 steps forward to be involved in the run game. We want to stop the run first, partially because one, Duke really wants to run football, and 2, that's at the heart and soul of everything we believe in as a defense. We want you to be forced to beat us throwing the football. Now, sometimes that happens, but we want to make sure that you're not able to do both, right? We want you to have to choose. And the thing we want to take away first is the run game. Against the passing game, if it's short passing, we basically treat that like the run game. We defend it almost the same way. If you're throwing wide receiver screens, we treat that as basically a power sweep to a wide receiver, right? We treat it like an option pitch to a wide receiver. We treat it like you just trying to get to the edges and run on us, basically. You can call a wide receiver screen a passing play because technically speaking it is, but the way it's blocked up and the way we defend it is essentially like an outside run. And then last but not least, when you try to take deep shots, and you will, I mean, against a team that likes to take away underneath routes, it just makes sense to take deep shots. One, we do trust both our corners and safeties in deep coverage, sometimes too much, as occasionally is a problem, but we choose that. We are choosing to put the onus on them. Other teams choose not to do that, but that's it. We say, you know what? We believe in you. We believe in you. And if we lose with you going out and trying to do your best in that situation. So we're now going to give the floor to Mr. Kevin Johns, in this case, embodied by one Mr. Brock Vierra, to talk about how you attack what we're trying to do to take away what you are trying to do.
Yeah. So the first thing we want to do is identify the type of defense that we're going to see. And the unfortunate part for Duke is a lot of the offensive structure they have is very similar to Ohio State. So they basically are just going to get a worse version of what they saw on last Saturday. However, they are playing a better quarterback. So it gets a little bit evened out a little bit more. As you mentioned, Notre Dame loves to walk people to the line quick, but they also have to stack the line as well. But they run defensively I would classify it as a more modified version of a 3-3-5. They sometimes will go maybe 6 DBs on the field. They really like to put in a bunch of hybrid players as well, and they're very good at it. They have one of the best linebacker rooms in the country. Guys like Jordan Patello, Marius Liufau, J.D. Bertrand, and Jack Kaiser. And those guys, they utilize them tremendously. So for Duke, they have 2 base formations. They have a bunch of things they do, but there's 2 base formations they really like to run a lot of their offense out of. We're going to talk about those today. Unfortunately, I'm a visual learner, so I had drawn it out for our viewers. Cool. See. Now, hopefully, this works. So, all right. So, excellent. So, we're going to go with our base package, also known as 11 personnel. That's 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. You got your X over here, your Z over here, your slot receiver right here, of course, your tight end. And what I really want people to think about is the numbers on each side. Now, if you go down the middle of the page, there we go. And please be patient because I'm doing this kind of inverted because of the camera. We go down. We want to look. What is the eligible receivers on each side? So on this side, we're gonna have 1. We're gonna have 4. So we got 4 by 1. I want you to keep that in mind as we continue, as we build this offense moving on. Now, as you already mentioned, Duke is very run heavy in their offense, and that's why they're able to exploit teams in the pass game and really open up things for Ryan Leonard. Now, first, before we get into it, I want to talk about Ryan Leonard. He's a very accurate passer. He can throw the deep ball, but the biggest thing he does, he rarely makes mistakes. He doesn't really put the ball in too many dangerous situations. He throws the ball away a lot more than you would see from college quarterbacks at that age. And he shows a sense of maturity and calmness in the pocket that you really want to see at the next level. And that's really going to help us as we move forward. Now, Duke, for the most part, outside of Clemson, which even you can include them in it, has had a easier schedule. They just beat up on UConn last week, and they really dominant performance. So this is going to be their first major test of the season. And should they win, they're going to put themselves right in the college football playoff conversation and also going to establish themselves as major contenders in the ACC. Now, going back to this, how is Notre Dame going to defend it? And we're going to go to exactly what Bill said about they like to bring the heat. They really like to stack the line. If you go back and watch the tape against Ohio State, it's exactly what they did. Whether it's go 3-5, or they'll bring in linebackers, whatever, they really like to stack this at least 5 on the line of scrimmage. Now, whether they come or they bail out, it really comes up to the scheme. As you mentioned, they like to blitz periodically, so most of the time they're going to bail out. Whenever they put 2 linebackers together, they're most likely going to start to bail out anyway. And then when they put one linebacker in between, there we go. One linebacker, there we go. One linebacker in between the defensive tackle and defensive end. Defensive tackle to line up on the A gap. Defensive end likes to line up outside. That guy's going to operate more of a spy. He's going to pretend to kind of be in the line of scrimmage, maybe back up a little bit. His eyes are going to be in the backfield, and his responsibility is either going to be keying in on the quarterback or getting the running back out of the backfield, whatever that is. Of course, the DBs, they run a variety of coverages, but there is a way to exploit it. So now that we talked about that, let's talk about how do we build an offense. And once again, I want people to think about that 4-by-1 because it's going to change when we go 3-by-2 and so on and so forth. So once again, I didn't get a chance to draw the defense, but I did draw kind of the offensive schemes of what they would be running. So there's a variety of things that they want to do as soon as I can figure out which one of these plays was first on my drawing list. All right, so here we go. Excellent. So they ran this play against Duke against UConn to massive success. And it's going to be – I didn't draw the wide receivers because it's not important in this situation because they're just going to be blocking. But basically what they're going to do is they're going to go back to that 4-by-1. So it's going to be 4 on this side, 1 on this side. And essentially they're going to have shift. They're going to run the ball. They're going to set all their offensive linemen to the right side. And with the right guard, they're going to pull him as shown right here with the tight end. And they're going to come across the other way. So when Duke is offensive lineman is heading this way, their defenders are going to get jammed up, and it's really going to isolate the outside linebacker or the outside end, and that's where the pulling guard and the pulling tight end is going to be able to open up a gap on the inside or even on the outside, depends on the way that the defense is aligned for the running back to take it, away. And this is a perfect example of it. So obviously we see the tight end at the bottom of the screen. This is a little bit different because instead of 4-by-1, they're going 2 to the left side of the screen, and then we got 3 to the strong side on the right side of the bottom half of the screen. But it's the same concept. When they line up, their entire offensive line is going to shift down to the right, to the strong side, where that right guard and tight end are going to pull with the running back to the left-hand side. If you look back at Michigan versus Ohio State 2 years ago at the Big House, this is what they ran a lot with Hassan Haskins to incredible success, and that's why Haskins had a career day. So that's what we're going to try and do to really set the tempo of this game and really see how physical Notre Dame is going to be on the day. Now, they're going to – it's going to probably give them maybe 2-3 yards of play. It's not going to be something that's going to be able to consistently move the ball down the field, but it's a tone setter. So the question becomes, how do we build off of that? And it's very simple. And here's a couple of strategies that I would like to see Duke employ. So obviously we talked about that. Now, this is the reverse end of it. Line up I'm a pencil. Line up in the same formation. We're still going to have 4-1. We're going to motion the tight end over to the weak side, and then essentially we're going to run it right up the gut with our offensive line slanted to the left, and then our tight end coming across in order to seal off the edge shooting down. It's going to give him, again, another 3 to 4 yards as long as that offensive line can get major penetration. Then we're going to really want to do this because the linebackers are going to feel confident, they're going to feel aggressive on Notre Dame or to come down and key in on that running back, and that's how you hit them up top with either the play action or the RPO. Now, another thing that you can do, again, remember that 4-by-1 is we can change those numbers in order to make the Notre Dame defense shift. So going back to this, we're going to motion, or we can even come out in that formation, as Bill previously shown, as running back is going to be on the weak side. So we're going to go 3-by-2. Now, 3-by-2 is very important because now we have more pass catching threats on the weak side, which is going to make them having to shift their coverages a little bit more. And when you talk about Marcus Freeman's defense, he'll give us some space. And he runs a very bend but don't break defense. So you're going to be able to find those easy yards doing the same thing. Now, in the same thing, we're going to run the exact same thing just from the opposite angle. Again, with that shift, you should have some advantages. Now, when we talk about the pass game, how do we implement that? Now, we can go over the RPOs you can run, the play actions you can run, but you guys are smart people. You guys watch football just like we do. We don't need to go over that because it'll just be one day. But here's something that was really going to kill them. It's going to be the motion. So let's go back. So now we're going to put everybody up. Again, 3-by-2. We're going to take the slot receiver, and we're going to motion him to the side. And then we're going to run a play action with the running back. It's going to be a play action toss to the slot, play action to the running back, and then the running back is going to be able to become a blocker. The offensive linemen are going to shoot down to the right like they've normally been doing. And so that's going to fit the end, which is going to be the running back's responsibility. It is a very questionable thing if that running back cannot block him. However, if that end hesitates trying to seal the edge, it should give Leonard enough time to be able to deliver the ball. Let's talk about the route pattern. As previously mentioned, we got Notre Dame's defense that realized to crowd that line. So either they're going to be coming down, playing a little fiddle on the line of scrimmage or whatever. So who's going to be left in coverage? You're going to have 4 DBs across the board, and then you're going to have free safety is going to be lower, and then strong safety on top, which is perfect for us in this situation because if we look, whatever coverage they run, the first read is going to be the slot receiver that's going to be coming out and basically streaking down the field. And what that's going to do is either the free safety is going to have to go after him and basically do a bunch of stuff. So I have this. So that's one of the plays that I have in now. I'll go back to it, but this kind of like draws out what the defensive assignments are going to do a little bit more on a somewhat similar play. Oh, wrong side. Somewhat similar play, kind of out of shotgun. Let's see. Do this right here. All right, excellent. So basically, in this situation, we're going to go 2-by-3, motion the slot receiver, and then have him go. So that's going to be the free safety responsibility because even though the X is going to come across, that free safety is going to basically make a decision depending on the coverage, whether he goes for the X or he goes for the slot. Now, depending on that, that's going to be where Riley Leonard's eyes are going to go to first. The free safety comes down, that means that the slot is going to have a one-on-one matchup with the outside DB, and thus you might be favorable. But that's not the initial play. That's just in order to get the free safety out of the play. And then this X is coming down, and what that's going to do is that's going to make these 2 linebackers down here jump up in coverage, and that's going to take out their responsibility. So then we're going to go to the tight end over here, and then the Z over here. So the tight end and the Z is where the 2 major reads are going to be. The Z is going to come over the top on another horizontal route that the Rams like to use a lot with Cooper Kupp, and it frees up because, once again, the free safety is going to be building out the zone, and the linebackers are not going to be dropping 10 yards in coverage. They're going to be worried about this guy right here, and that's not usually their assignment. And Riley Leonard has a strong enough arm to get there. So either one of these 3 DBs that are stacking up next to each other is going to have to go after him, which is going to create an opportunity because they're going to be behind him, so Riley Leonard should be able to hit him in stride. Or the strong safety is going to have to come down hard in order to get him. Or this DB is going to have to try and cover this zone. Either way, it's going to spread them out very well. It's good, seriously stretching them more than your school stretches peanut butter, right? Like it's going to be milk-laced peanut butter all over. That's how stretched they're going to be. Now the tight end is going to come down with, I know all our run and shoot fans know this word, but I'm going to say it again, the seam, all right? So they're going to be able to come down the seam. So if these guys are bailing out as we expect them to, that means that this tight end is going to have a one-on-one matchup with one of these DBs where he probably is going to have a height advantage. So Leonard can either hit the Z coming across, he can hit the slot going up in case the free safety comes down, or he can hit the tight end on a one-on-one coverage and where he should be able to grab the ball and kind of take it from there. Now, how do we kind of evolve off of that is by running the pistol. Now, the pistol is, again, kind of the same concept. Instead of having the running back a shotgun and, going to the 4-by-1, we're going to go 1-by-3 with the running back that can go either way, which really can confuse the responsibilities of the linebackers. So essentially with this play, it's kind of the same concept. DB, it's X is going to come across, the free safety should come down or to guard him. It's going to play action to the running back. So he should be able to go up, which is going to create that same matchup problem for the free safety. He has to choose either to come down or go with the running back. And then tight end and the offensive side are going to block down to the left. These DBs are probably going to drop off in coverage. You're going to send the slot and the Z, basically streaks. So it's going to create a decision for the strong safety to make whether these guys get burnt. And then you're going to have Riley let it roll out. Now, with this, the tight end is going to block down to his left and then pull out to the right. So that's going to probably give him a free space, and that's going to be our first read right there. It's probably a 6-7 yard game, especially if these DBs are dropping off to follow the receivers streaking on the field. Now, however, if they come down and the safety and one of the DBs is with them all the way, the second read is going to be higher with the X coming across the field. And that's going to be a more modernized version of a levels concept. They want to do these little tricky things to really make Notre Dame have to shift their hips opposite way on a dime, and that's going to create a lot of opportunities to make some very easy throws for completions.
We got. Here we go. Keep going.
You're right now?
Oh yeah, right? Everything's great. I'm sorry, I thought you were. Go ahead, keep going.
All right, so we got one last thing to talk about. That's the other base formation. That's the 4 wide. Now this is essentially once again run and shoot standard formation. You're gonna go 3-by-2 automatically. And the way they like to defend this is by stacking the line because they have a numbers advantage. So if you do 6-man protection, they got 6 dudes coming at you. If you have 5-man protection, they got 1 free rusher coming at your quarterback. But at the same time, they're going to have to play a variety of coverages, which might include cover 0. This is something that you might see if they get late in the game and Duke is down by points and need to pass the ball and get quickly because once again, you can spread the field doing that. But I expect them to run a majority of 11 personnel. The key thing for them against Notre Dame is they can't get behind the sticks. You need to be very creative in how you get people open, and you need to evolve the way you do basic concepts like level concepts because Notre Dame is too fundamentally sound in order to beat them by the standard way in which you would use those. By putting in these little wrinkles here and there and really allowing Leonard not only to have the ability to throw the ball downfield, but also just to get out of the pocket, to shift the pocket, and also to allow him to throw the ball away when needed. That is how you're able to control the game. Now, the problem is that Notre Dame has a great offense with Sam Hartman, Audric Estime, and all those boys. The good part is Mike Elko is one of the best defensive minds in college football, and Duke has a very, very, very underrated defense. So I think that there's a high possibility that Elko and that Duke defense can hold Notre Dame to under 28 points. Now, the question is, can Duke score 4 touchdowns? You're going to have to do a lot of long drives to do so. But the main thing is that you've got to be able to establish the run first, and you got to be able to trust your quarterback to make the right plays and through this evolution of already honed concepts. So that's what I would do if I was the offensive coordinator of the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, and these are 2 really good coaching staffs, I think, is what comes through. The talent advantage goes to Notre Dame, but it's not as big a gap as people might be thinking. Duke is better than it's been talent-wise in a long time, in addition to being so well coached. This Duke team's not going to lose a lot of football games this year. I think their floor is 8-4. I don't think they'll be any worse than 8-4, and I wouldn't be shocked if they won 9 or 10 games. So these are 2 teams that each team has a shot at being a double-digit win team this year. So watch out.
Keep in mind Duke won 9 games last year, including a bowl win, and that was in Elko's first year. They're 4-0 this year. They're off to a great start in ACC play. And we don't know how Notre Dame was going to handle that loss. Not only did they lose to Ohio State, but in the way that they did. They had Ryan Day talking trash in South Bend in front of touchdown Jesus. They had 10 men on the field. That plays a role psychologically. And also, Marcus Freeman is a young head coach who has faced a variety of obstacles in his young coaching career, being up 28-7 in the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State and losing to Marshall at home after losing to Ohio State in his first 2 games as a regular season head coach. These things can add up. So it's going to be chin check time for him, and I'm looking very forward to seeing how he responds as well. So like you mentioned, great coaching staffs, great teams, great players, 2 teams headed in really good directions. Looking really forward to this game. Expect fireworks is all I can say.
I really do. I'm going to throw out just a couple of players for people to watch out for, and then we'll close out the show. I really like what I've seen from several teams. And I mentioned, obviously, Mr. Damian Martinez, and that's a really good football team. And DJ Youngalele, whether or not you love him as a pro prospect or even as a college player, he's been effective. He's been smart. He's done a lot of the right things. But that's not who I'm going to talk about. Though I hope that people have, started to realize that some of the problems that they had at Clemson weren't all his problems, I guess is what I'm driving at. There were some other things going on and have now been sort of laid bare that people can now see that Clemson was beginning to run up against some issues that continue to be problems for them. Now, Will Shipley's a terrific, if I think somewhat limited, but terrific young running back. But let me just get back to who I actually came to talk about. There's two, really more than two, but I'll start with two terrific. In fact, I'm going to give you four. I'll give you four. Terrific FCS defensive end / whatever, stand-up pass rushers and sometimes hand-in-the-dirt guys. Now, Anton Junkaj is a legit hand-in-the-dirt guy. He's already won a Nutties. He may win two that's an award we give at Team MBS Sports. He is a guy who has 7 sacks in 4 games. I'll say it again. He has 7 sacks in 4 games. And these aren't like him getting a helper. No, they're all 7 solo sacks, all by his lonesome. 7 sacks in 4 games. And he's at Albany, where a couple of years ago, of course, they had Jared Verse. And of course, he took quite a backseat to Mr. Verse, who now is plying his trade at Florida State. But they have another guy. He's a different kind of player. He's more like a Cal Vanden Bosch type. He's 273 pounds. He's a bigger guy than Verse. Uses his hands well. He's not quite as explosive or as bendy, but he's really good. He uses, like I say, he's got power. He doesn't mess around with you. He puts people on skates. And a similar guy, another power rusher, is Nate Lynn at William & Mary. And, of course, I started bothering, and once again, shout out to Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl for putting up with me bothering him. And I'll be bothering him again this year about Nate Lynn, since Nate Lynn came back for that COVID year. So this is another guy who's a legit 262 pounds, probably about 6'2 3/4, and another guy that wins with power more than with speed, though he's got some speed. He's a guy who has posted 5 solo sacks of his 6 total sacks. So he has 2 assists, but 5 solo sacks in 4 games. And plays against a fairly high level of competition, is a really good player. And I'll give you just a couple of more quickly. Nick Gates at South Dakota is one of my favorite FCS pass rushers. Plays against a very high level of competition. South Dakota plays in the brutally difficult Missouri Valley Conference, where there's several NFL-type offensive linemen he's faced already in his career. And his partner, Brendan Webb. Now, even though Gates is a slightly better college player, I could see some people preferring Webb as a pro prospect. I think he may end up testing better. It'll be interesting to see exactly how he tests. But Webb is one of those guys that when you look at him and you're breaking him down and things like that, he creeps up on you, but he's probably legitimately 6'3 1/4, and he probably is a legit 258 or so pounds. And like I said, he's not a freak athlete, but I think he'll test fairly well. He's an older prospect. That's the only thing that probably will sort of weigh him down. He was a redshirt freshman, or he redshirted back in 2018, then was a redshirt freshman in 2019, a double redshirt freshman in 2020, then a redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, and now is a redshirt senior, technically speaking, but he's been in school since 2018. But there's a lot to like with all those guys. And I know we talk usually about FBS players, but I just wanted to shout out some of the FCS pass rushers because I think it's a really super deep FCS pass rusher class. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't shout some of them out.
No, you would not.
Did you have anybody you wanted to mention before we close this sucker out?
No, I think you kind of covered everybody. I just want to say, talking about obviously on the offensive side of the football, there's a lot of quarterbacks that have been getting love because it's more of the logo on the side of the helmet than in terms of the play on the field. I think guys like Cam Ward and Ryan Leonard are guys that people aren't talking enough about because, they go to Washington State and they play at Duke instead of, Drake Mays at North Carolina and also Caleb Williams, who's at USC, and all these phenomenal quarterbacks. One quarterback that has really just, what's the right way to put it, popped off the page, I would say, for me, is Drew Pine. And I'm not talking about NFL quality, but I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not talking about NFL quality at all. Drew Pine against USC was it a no-win situation because the future is firmly in Jalen Rashada's hands. Drew Pine is in a program that is in a massive rebuild and has instituted a self-imposed bowl ban. And for him to come out last week against USC and play at the level that he did, I just wanted to give him his flowers and just say that that dude is someone that I think is not going to have a tremendous career in the NFL as a starter, but has that weird, sneaky attitude about him that spells 15 years NFL backup. So if you ever see Drew Pine, especially with this new era of the third emergency quarterback, come draft time, if you have your team is a late 7th round pick and you only have 2 quarterbacks on the roster, expect Drew Pine to get selected. I think that his fundamentals are more sound than people think. I think he's a very good teammate. I think that when he's called upon, he makes plays more times than you would expect. And for as much adversity as that young man has been through, he just keeps smiling, pushing, and playing. And those are just really commendable traits that you love in a player like that. So just wanted to shout out Drew Pine real quick.
And I will say, that's how I know that growth is possible for human beings, because to hear you praise Drew Pine lets me know that people can change and grow and become better people. So on that incredibly positive note, let's close the show out before something else happens. On behalf of Team MBS Sports, and of course, once again, my co-host, Mr. Brock Vierra, the babyface assassin himself, I'm Bill Carroll. And once again, we will have a return of one of our friends of the show, the one, the only Mr. Donovan James will be back next week to report from us what he saw live and in person at the USC Colorado game, where he will be this weekend. So once again, I thank you all for your time, your talents, your attention. We will do this again in 1 week.